Gentlemen, thank you so much for being on the show today. Give us, a brief introduction of who you are and what you do. Tom, we'll start with you.
All right. Hello, everyone. I am Tom Eston. I am the founder and co-host of the Shared Security Show. So we are a podcast that on cybersecurity and privacy that has been around for, well over 13, almost 14 years now. Yeah. So
that's impressive.
Thank you. And I have been on the Security Ed podcast a few times.
Yes, you have.
And Andy has been on our podcast as well. So we're just paying it forward here. And I'm really excited to be back on the show.
Good to have you. So, Kevin, tell us about yourself.
I'm the comic relief. And
that's all he is.
It's my only purpose. I'm not that smart. I'm not that qualified. I just say dumb things. And Tom uses them as the caption for most of our videos.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I'm Kevin Johnson. I don't know. I'm a co-host on the Shared Security podcast. I enjoy it. I'm here to reveal to everybody that Andy's not actually a dad. It's all been a ruse.
And, of all the
replaced by AI.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he's been replaced by AI. I bow to our AI overlords.
There you go. And Scott, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, I guess you could call me the token Canadian on the panel. I get needled about that for some reason. So, but yeah, I've been working with Tom and Kevin on the podcast since 2009, and back when it was called the Social Media Security Podcast, and it was done on Skype. No video.
Oh my gosh,
that's really old.
Yeah, I forgot we used Skype.
We did.
That was the one that I always messed up when I said it to people, which I think might be why Tom changed the name, because I would always tell people it was the Social Security Podcast. I'm like, no, wait, that's retirement.
Yes, show about retirement. That's what everybody wants to hear about.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because we're qualified.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I actually listen to your show every week, and I really do enjoy it. As somebody who's not necessarily in the tech industry, I do appreciate how you were able to dumb it down for the rest of us who really don't exactly know what's going on. So I appreciate that. And I also appreciate the tangents that Kevin goes off on at random. So we'll see how it goes today.
Why is it always me? Oh, wait.
Because it is always you.
I mean, let's be very clear. We have a podcast that has been run for, I didn't realize how long it had been, but you're right. It's been that long because I'm old. And what we have is a podcast that is amazingly built and set up and prepared for by Tom.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he does every week. If you like the show, that's because of Tom. If you dislike the show, it's probably my fault. Scott then brings a perspective that is different. Scott is. I don't want to say Scott's. I hate to say it. Scott has a less technical viewpoint than Tom.
Absolutely,
has on things, right? I always feel like I'm insulting people when I say that, but that's not how I mean it. And the two of them bring really relevant, really good information. Your statement about dumbing it down, I don't think it's dumbing it down. I think what you see from that idea that they say stuff and you understand it is because the two of them know things so well that they can explain it to anybody. Right, which is a skill.
Well, that's not true. That's not true, Kevin.
Right?
So I'm the one who always asks, wait a minute, what does that mean?
But you're asking the questions other people have, and then I'm there mainly, like I said, for comic relief. I'm there to complain about politics, to make it harder for Tom to edit things, and it somehow comes together. I think I'm actually really proud of what Tom and us have pulled together.
And you should be, and that's why I have you guys here today, because these AI chatbots, they have gone viral. Everybody knows about them. Is this the end of humanity and the rise of Skynet? Is that what we're looking at here?
Gosh, I hope so.
we personally bow to our robot overlords quite frequently on the show.
Tom's intros actually are written by ChatGPT. So.
Yeah.
Lately they have been. And it's hilarious because you can always tell because of how different it is from how Tom introduces us. Right? It's funny. End of humanity. Oh gosh.
I think we're
Let's
already
see.
on that path. It might just speed it up a little bit, right?
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that.
From what I've seen of humanity lately, I'm not so sure.
Right. Yeah. We
But,
need a little bit of help here.
Yeah.
So if AI can help solve our problems, that
Right.
would be a good thing, right? But
Mm.
it's interesting. We've had a lot of conversations about AI and is it going to take over jobs, and are we all going to be unemployed one day? And I guess I don't see that like in our near future, right? Like I see it as it's a way to assist us, right? With the mundane things, right? That's kind of how I'm looking at it, is not
Mhm.
a killer of our jobs or our life or the way we live our lives, but it's an enhancement in a lot of ways.
Okay.
I 100% agree. I think that AI is escalating the evaluation of what work means,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
And we've talked about this for centuries, right? We can get into the debate about minimum wage. We can get into the debate about low skilled workers. We can get into the debate about repetitive tasks and things like that. What I like to focus on are the enhancements. One of the things really early in the Chat GPT, sorry,
All
one
right.
of the things very early in the Chat GPT thing that was fascinating to me was the dyslexic young man who got
Mm.
a business email generator set up where he was struggling, and I don't remember if he was dyslexic or less, I don't want to say less educated.
Mhm.
Right. He was in a position he didn't know the language very well or had some trouble communicating the language for some reason. And I believe it was him that built it. He built an automated system
Mhm.
that he would go in, he would write something, it would throw it at ChatGPT, and it would rewrite it into a professional email that enabled this person to get a job that they weren't, because they were very skilled at the job, but they weren't skilled at communication, and so they couldn't get past the gatekeepers of HR.
Mhm.
And that's why I
Yeah.
say is I think there's too much attention paid on to the, oh my gosh, it's going to destroy people, people are going to be out of work. I personally, I believe that we should be moving away from the idea of work anyways. We should be moving away from the idea that we're required to do a task that we don't love, and move humanity to passion. And I don't mean the mambo. I mean, right, if you didn't have to do all of the stuff you hate to do for your job and could focus on the things that you like to do, because AI did the rest of it,
Mhm.
I don't see how that'd be a bad thing. Now, the way we're set up right now, that's going to cause problems. It's going to cut off
Yeah.
people, and we've talked many times about the net good of technology so far has always been on the positive. We have to get through the hurdles and I used AI to make that person naked when they weren't, or something.
Right. Right.
It's a lot of bad stuff right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It is. So I know that Chat GPT is just yesterday come out, all sides has qualified them now, I guess, as left leaning, because so it wouldn't write a poem about Donald Trump, but it would write one about Joe Biden, which is interesting. Okay. I didn't
interesting.
think, but it was newsworthy. So let me ask you at this point, is Chat GPT this novelty, or is this really the start of something big? Scott, what do you think? Is this the start of something, or is this just something that's going to fizzle out?
Well, I think it's the first sort of public, mass recognition of something big. I think it's been started for a long time. AI, I remember in 1980s, that's how far back I go, like AI was a cool thing. Then it was going to take over the world, and it probably several generations went through and failed to deliver on the promise. But in this case, I think Kevin brought it up one time in one of our earlier episodes. It's really important to realize how easy it is to use, that, and the accessibility factor of it, to be able to get at such a powerful engine that's never really been put out that way before. And so it is I mean, you could argue almost any generalization. A chat GPT is going to be horrible for the world. It's going to be great for the world, right? I mean, what I see though, and I wrote a blog post about this earlier, was I think one thing we can recognize it will do is create what I call chat kitties, right? It's like the script kiddies who used to just download code and do denial of service attacks really easily. And there are lots of ways that, you know, people without any technical skills can now become attackers, which we didn't see before. But that doesn't mean they're going to be the worst risk, right? The worst risk is probably going to be where attackers who are sophisticated use chat GPT to do some of the stuff like Kevin said, do the easy stuff or stuff they don't like, and then they'll be able to do even better attacks than they're doing now. So, you know, my paradox is, you know, the more we make things convenient for ourselves, the more it makes it easy for attackers. They'll find some way to exploit or some new way to sort of come across in ways we didn't expect.
Very cool. So, what Scott, Tom, Kevin, what do you guys think?
Yeah. I mean, I think like we talked about, like people's, you know, chat kitties, as Scott says, using it for creating malware or phishing emails. I think in some ways it's made it a little bit easier, but it hasn't changed the fact that you know, script kiddies have existed forever, and they just found code that somebody did, they stole that code and used it, or they modified code where maybe they have a little bit of technical ability and then made it into an attack. So it's not like changing the fact that people have always been writing malware and creating phishing campaigns. It just, in some ways, it just made it a little more convenient, but it hasn't changed the paradigm that we will still have malware, we will still have phishing, we'll still have all these things. So I'm really fascinated about how now there's school systems, right, that are banning it, and because they think kids are going to use it to cheat. And you could maybe take the same analogy of like, well, kids have always been cheating in school.
Right. Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, it's no different than, you know, in the 80s. I remember there was a kid I could hire for $10 that would write my essay for me and make it sound just like the way that I like to write, or, you know, look at one of my previous essays. I mean, this stuff has existed since the beginning of time.
And when we were in high school, we couldn't use calculators in our exams, right?
Yeah. And they told you're never going to have a calculator with you all the time, so you got to learn your multiplication tables. Well, that didn't work
now
out.
I have a supercomputer in my pocket.
And we use it to look at cat pictures and record.
Yes,
and,
exactly.
I want to jump back to something you said when you started this question, and that was, you know, there was an article or something newsworthy about the ChatGPT would write a poem about Biden, not about Trump, so it's left leaning. And I want to be clear, I don't know about that. I didn't see that. I missed that, I guess. But I think one of the problems we have with moving this forward in goodness is the fact that we are hearing so much from people who claim a political bias or a social bias in these things.
Any bias.
This idea that, well, it's left leaning, it's right leaning. And I don't mean this towards you. Please do not take this the wrong way. But I'm tired of hearing the asinine, ignorant statements like that from people. And the reason I say that is the system is not biased. We train it.
It's the data.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. That's the problem.
And it's the same thing as, okay, so ChatGPT didn't write an article or a poem about Trump, which I'm not sure. Like I said, I didn't read the article. I would think that not writing a poem about Trump would actually be more right-leaning because you're not insulting him. Right. But I don't know, because I don't know what they were trying to do. But I will point out that, okay, you want to talk about leaning to the right. Microsoft's first AI chatbot that they released on Twitter became a Nazi within 30 seconds.
It did. It did.
And I'm not calling our right-leaning people Nazis. Okay,
right.
Some of them Nazis. But the idea is these systems are trained on us.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, as we start, and I know we've started decades ago, because Scott's absolutely right. I remember, was it Lizabot that we all played with in the 80s and early 90s? But as we begin to get these things to understand us, we are amplifying something that we've talked about on the podcast quite a bit. And that is that the loudest, darkest voices get the most attention.
Yes.
Yep. And that's
a
not
great
new,
point.
right?
Right.
Journalism
Nothing
has
new.
always been, if it bleeds, it leads, right? Like that. And so what we see is, depending on which person is putting it forward, we see presented the darkest things we train it on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because that wants attention. Do I believe that the AI systems will be partisan, that the AI systems will lean one way or another and be bad for the other way? Yes, absolutely. And the reason I believe that is we as humanity still have not fixed the idea that we hate each other.
Yeah.
And so we're training the AI systems on our hate. And that bothers me because I see, and maybe I'm just an optimistic moron. I've been called worse, but I've been told I'm not allowed to say it on this podcast.
Correct.
But I believe that ultimately we are capable of good. And because we're capable of good, if we focus on that usage, if we focus on the things that help, the dyslexic guy that needed to be able to work, the ability to say, you know what, you spend most of your day responding to information that is already available on your website. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to build a chatbot that is driven by machine learning and trained on your organization. And it's going to do all those responses. So you're going to be able to dedicate your efforts to improving your life, your work, your whatever. If we focus on that, I think we will get there faster. What is holding us back right now, in my opinion, and I'm an idiot, but in my opinion, what's holding us back right now is almost every article I read focuses on the bad things that happen. And we get these nice feel-good articles every once in a while. There is amazing research being done right now. There is amazing efforts being done right now to help people. And we focus on the bad. That just bothers. I'm just ranting. Sorry.
Yeah. I get it.
I'm gonna take a contrarian kind of view on that, Kevin, because when you look back at other technologies that have become ubiquitous, take email, right? If we had focused only on the good things about email, which in fact we actually did, we would end up with really insecure email.
Yeah. But let me ask you a question. And I know this is going to sound odd coming from the guy whose job is professional hacker. Why do we care so much that email is insecure? If we built an email system that, in my opinion, is absolutely insecure, we have more problems with phishing emails and scams and stuff like that. But for every scam you see, how many times has email helped you stay in touch with somebody that you see once a decade? How many times has email helped you get the information you need to help your family, to help your friends, right? You're absolutely right. We focused on the good with email. Because I remember, look, I'll be 50 in a couple weeks. I'm old, fat, and lazy, right? I ran a bulletin board system when I was 14 years old. I had a 2400 baud modem. And let me be very clear, I didn't have a dedicated phone line. We just turned the board on at 9 p.m. and then we turned it back off at 3 p.m. and we'll ignore the fact that the line had call waiting. So people would dial in and somebody else would dial in and disconnect the first person. It was awesome, right? But I remember when I got hooked to FidoNet, right? It was like, oh my gosh, I'm able to email people in the Ukraine. I don't know, right? Like this was amazing. And we focused on the good. And what we have today has problems. And what we have today is used for attackers. But the overwhelming goodness from email. And what I'm afraid is because we say, well, email's insecure. And don't get me wrong, I've said it, right? That we're going to do the same thing with AI. And we're going to focus on the bad. And in 20 years, we're not going to have the wealth of goodness that email is today with AI. Because we took that contrarian view. That's what I'm worried about.
I just think we need to focus enough on the vulnerabilities and issues that they should be solved, to make it, so for example, in email, how much time and money do we spend on educating people to look at the sender email address when it's not typically shown to people? Right?
Sure. Right.
But
A
let me,
lot
but
of time
let me-
wasted.
But let me ask you a question. So you say, and again, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but it's my nature, right? You say we should focus on the vulnerabilities and solve them. How many vulnerabilities have we solved? In anything, how many vulnerabilities has InfoSec actually solved? I don't mean that we have a fix for. I don't mean that we have an option that would make us more secure. How many vulnerabilities have we actually solved?
Well, there's never an ultimate solution. I understand what you're saying. So,
Right.
but it's a
So-
cat and mouse.
That's a great
game,
question.
and-
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah.
That's why we still have jobs.
Exactly.
Look,
And-
That's why we're hijacking this podcast.
Well, no,
Yes.
and speaking of your jobs, I do want to ask you guys a question because of everything that all three of you do. You know, how is AI going to affect cybersecurity? Is it going to be something that's going to help the average user? Or, I mean, definitely, I think at your level it will, but like at my level, how is this going to help? I know it's a big, broad question, but how is this going to affect cybersecurity as a whole?
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So I don't mean to be rude. I don't know
Mhm.
your level. You started with, I'm not very technical, that's not your focus, I think is how you phrased it, right?
Mhm.
So I'm going to treat your level as a normal user that just uses technology to do the things they want to do,
Okay.
right? Okay. So how long have you had an email address?
Probably 20, 22 years, something like that.
Great. Do you use any service? And I'm not going to make you name the one, but do you use a service like Gmail or Outlook or like a cloud
Big name server? Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So how much better is the filtering of spam today than it was 20 years ago?
It's a lot better.
Right. AI is
Yeah.
going to make that even better.
Okay.
Because right now I just had this conversation. I'm buffering. I'm sorry. I just had this conversation with some of my staff that we have some important emails that are coming in and they're being sent to spam because our mail provider, which is Gmail, I don't have a problem saying it because, I've said it before. It's seeing an email and it's going, whoop, that's bad. Throw it to spam. And I look and it's like, oh, wait, no, actually, that's important. That's a contract I need to sign, right? With AI. And it's funny because I look at it, the contract I have to sign came from a signature system that I pay for. I subscribe to it. So every contract that I initiate comes from that email address. It comes from that source. It comes with that wording. So why did the contract this morning go to spam? Well, it's because the system Gmail uses has problems. And that type of problem is exactly the one that the simple versions of machine learning AI or whatever, right? I cringe when we say AI, but that's just me. I'm a pedantic jerk. That type of learning is the simplest one to learn, right? Every week I get multiple emails that have this content, this attachment from this sender with this subject line, right? Machine learning gets trained, that will never go to my spam folder, right? Because it matches all the things it was trained on. So from a personal perspective, that's where we're going to get better. And that's just one example, right? Of we are going to better protect you from scams. We're going to better protect you from malware. We're going to better protect you from jerks like me on the internet. Because machine learning and AI is going to make that better. I ranted a bit. Let other
the only thing I add to that too is just like, being in the cybersecurity field, I'd say that, there's a lot of, like, I went back to what I said earlier about mundane tasks, right? There's a lot of things that we as security professionals have to do in day-to-day jobs, essentially like looking at logs is a great example, right? You could have AI take that first pass at looking for anomalies in a log and then alert a human, right, that can actually do a human analysis on it. So again, I see it as augmenting a lot of the stuff that takes time and effort and honestly takes away from the talent that a human has, that analysis, right? Like AI, of course, people are going to say, well, AI could do that analysis, but not quite. And not quite yet. Right. So we still need that human oversight. And again, like you said, Kevin, like training those models, it'll get better. but I always feel that there's going to be, like, I mean, we have things that write code now for us and for developers, but it hasn't replaced developers, right? And there's a reason for that, because we still cannot replace pure human analysis, at least not yet,
right?
Because it's just way too difficult. We're just not there yet.
And in my opinion, we're never going to be completely there because there's always going to be things that humans do better. And that's not that's not a man, I'm such an elitist. But I am humanity, yay, or something. Yeah. But we're always going to have things. And that's what I said back about the passion, right? Like if when I worked on the base project, which was a web interface for analyzing snort alerts, right? The vast majority of what we tried to do with base was to get mundane things handled, right? Made it easy for the analyst to go quickly through stuff, right? And I'm not advertising a product. This is a open source project that if you're still using base, stop.
It's vulnerable.
Right? It has been maintained in 15 years or something, right? But its entire purpose was to make it easier for the analyst to get to the things only a human can do, right? That's what AI is. Was it Texas that has the McDonald's, that the entire McDonald's is automated? And not AI exactly, but right. To me, that is awesome. And I hear the people that are like, oh yeah, but what about the minimum wage worker that is out of work? I'm like, oh yeah, that sucks. And that's why we have to reevaluate work, right? We have to think about what do we do to ensure, and let me be very clear, contrary to what the internet says, everybody becoming a developer is not the right choice, right?
Right.
We have way too many things we could do. That's what I'm excited about is what can I replace? What can I change? Recognizing there's going to be turmoil, recognizing there's going to be bad crud that happens, right? People are going to do bad stuff with AI, right? We've already seen it. And we're going to see more of it, right? What was the announcement 2 days ago that the first feature film that the actors are all going to be there? The actors are still going to act, but every bit of their aging and stuff like that is going to be done by AI post processing.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about this. Right? Like I really am. And I'm excited about it because that's going to enable that filmmaker, the staff doing it, to focus on doing other things to make the movie better. We hope. I mean, there's also the evil idea that it'll just be done to cut costs and they'll make higher profits for the movie theater companies, right? But that's what I'm excited about.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to say, I believe, I think Kevin's right about all that stuff, but I also think that as we sort of the implication of that is the more we automate, the more important individual human decisions become. And that means that every decision we make actually has more risk built into it. And so people have to be able to learn more about how to manage their own risk environments, because they're going to be dealing with inputs to the AI, outputs from the AI, configuring the AI, and maybe managing AI when it croaks or can't manage stuff.
And if I may, I don't mean to make this an ad for ClickArmor, but like dead serious, I don't. But I think that this is an important thing to understand. Scott's right. There's more risk to what we're doing, and as we've talked about multiple times, we've talked about cows are deadly. Humans suck at risk assessment. Now, in some ways, that's good. If we were better at risk assessment, we would not be on the moon, right? We would not have satellites. We would not fly. We would not, because let's be very clear, the Wright brothers and the other people that were inventing planes at that time, because I understand there were multiple of them, right? If they really understood the risk of attaching wings and an engine to their body and then blowing themselves off a cliff, right? Like,
I think that's oversimplifying though, Kevin, because that's a project initiative and it needs to be risk assessed.
But but
you know,
what
we
I'm
can
saying is,
accept risk for certain missions as an
Well,
organization,
I
but
agree that we
individuals,
can
I get his point.
accept risk. What I'm
Mhm.
saying is we suck at evaluating it to whether or not we should assess it.
as
Where it
individuals, yes.
becomes
Yeah.
so important for individuals to understand what risk means, right? What does it mean to be risky? What does it mean?
Yes.
How to evaluate whether it's worth it? How to evaluate whether it's really bad or really good or whatever? And that's why I say is the idea of teaching people that instead of your example of something bad, right? You said we've taught people how to check to see if the sender's there, even though it's not displayed to them. Right. We've for too long taught people the wrong stuff.
Yeah.
And AI is definitely bringing to the front, to the whatever, bringing somewhere. It is bringing forward even more of that proof of look how bad people are at evaluating whether something makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll open up Pandora's box here and I'll step away as I ask this question. Tom, I'll start with you. What applications would you like to see AI used for going forward in the future? What do you want to see AI used for?
I would like to see AI being used for I mentioned mundane things, but I think I'm just taking creative writing as an example. I know that might be a controversial topic, especially for people that are authors, or maybe their job is around writing, authorship, and things like that. But I actually see it as an enhancement to that. I do understand the well, you're cheating if I use GPT to write my novel or write this essay or what have you. But I think that is one thing that we do have to address because that is going to come up. But I see it as an idea enhancer. So for creatives, for people that are looking for new ideas, or hey, you throw something into Chat GPT, it comes out with maybe a list of things to think about or to consider. Like, I would like to see more of that, especially with creative people, artists, and authors and things like that. That's really going to enhance their work. And I honestly think we're going to see some incredible arts and other things come out because of this in the future, because it's going to be used as an enhancer, not necessarily a replacement. And in fact, I would argue that the work that is done without AI, or maybe just slightly AI enhanced, and if we can prove that, is going to be more valuable in the future than, say, a purely AI generated blog or some other piece of content. But I think we as a society need to figure out a way of how do you identify one from the other? And I think that's going to be the challenge.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Uncanny Valley.
Yes. Yes.
It's not really Uncanny Valley, but I think it's related.
I get your point. I get your point. Yeah. Yeah. So what else? If you had to rip open Pandora's box here, guys, where else would you like to see AI used?
Scott.
Actually, I've been using it for interesting things like doing research, right? Learning about something that I need an answer for. And I think for research and analysis, like academic study, it's going to be really powerful. And even for things like investigations and transparency of policy decisions, trying to say what's the best policy, where has this worked, where has it not, and then publish that information. I think could be really powerful for things like human rights. Trying to figure out where the attacker or where the bad guys are likely to be and how they're likely to be operating could really help a lot of things in the human rights area.
Very cool.
I like the term Pandora's box, and I think I'm going to throw it out there. I would like to see way more work on deepfakes.
Oh yeah.
And by that
sure.
I mean everything from audio to video to writing to content to art. And as we move down that path, the detection becomes even more critical.
Yes, it is.
But
yeah.
One of the things that I've always said, and it's dumb because I'm a Star Wars fan, but the holodeck from Star Trek.
Yeah.
He wants the holodeck.
Sure. Who doesn't? Who doesn't
Stream.
want that?
Yeah.
But here's why I want it. We see, and I don't mean to be inappropriate or anything else like that, but I live in Florida. And right now we are seeing a huge fight over education. And I want to be blunt. In this statement, I don't care which side anybody is on the argument over education, because I think that education is so critical and so core to bringing up people well and improving everything that, in my opinion, if we got better at a combination of generating educational materials using AI. Because I tell you right now, I never learned the Gettysburg Address. Like that's
Neither did I.
been, people get that
You're
makes sense.
Canadian. You don't count,
right.
Scott.
Small difference. I was raised here in the U.S.
Okay.
Like as I got older, because I went to a private school to start with, and then I went to public school. When I got to public school, everybody had memorized the Gettysburg Address. It was like this rite of passage.
Sure.
To memorize the Gettysburg Address. And I talked to people about it, right? Like, okay, what is this thing? I mean, I read about it. I knew Lincoln stood up and said, we're going to free the slaves, when he had no power to do that because the states he was freeing them in were, in revolt from the government. But, right. And I talked to people about it. And as I'm an old fart now, looking back on it, I realized most of the people I talked to had no concept of the impact that that particular speech, right, had, how much of an impact it should have had, how much it meant to what they were learning, right? But if Lincoln had presented the Gettysburg Address to them in class, and I don't mean some guy dressed as Lincoln, I mean, right, like we've generated this video that is Lincoln speaking Lincoln's voice, speaking with his mannerisms, whatever, right? Could we have understood the impact? Would we understand the I Have a Dream speech better if it was presented to us directly by Martin Luther King Jr., but not just him speaking the speech, because we have videos of that,
right?
But him answering the questions, him talking about why he said what he said, him discussing what that was. Would we actually solve things, using Scott's word, right, like systemic racism or institutional racism? Would we actually understand better how to deal with what we deal with? Would kids who are depressed and bullied have better ideas of how to handle that if the system used that, right? And that's why I say is, right, like if we could focus on the educational, it ties to the research idea, it ties to the things like that. I'm an idiot. I am dumb at lots of things. I test really, really well. So I did well in school because I could fail everything else, sit down, get handed a test, and finish the test again, right? I just test well, always have, right? How much better as a person would I be today if AI systems had generated the supporting materials? I do not believe it should ever, or maybe not ever, I won't say that absolute, but I don't think AI is going to replace teachers, because that's where the human touch, the human, I don't mean them touching kids, that sounds inappropriate. I mean, I mean, like,
we know what you meant.
The human aspect of educating. I can still name, Mr. Mayhew, my algebra teacher, who really made me understand math, right? Miss Foxworthy, who really made me love the written word and stuff like that. That's not going to go away. But if we could support those good teachers with AI generated content that made the subject real to the kid, that's where I want to go. That's what I'm excited about.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, and I like that. And I'm hopeful for, maybe my son who is 10 now, maybe he'll have something like that. Maybe my grandchildren will have something like that. But that's neat. Yeah, we can hope. So, as we wrap up here, guys, kind of going back to my first question, is this the end of humanity and all that sort of stuff? What's a red flag that we should look for that somebody does with AI that we should think, oh, we might have gone too far here, or this might be the tipping point for something? What's a red flag that you think that we should go for it?
I was going to say this when Kevin was talking, but it's a perfect segue because, I agree with, there are case studies or use cases that Kevin describes that I think are going to be really valuable and helpful. But I really fear when deepfakes become mainstream, because we're going to stop trusting media. We're going to stop trusting authority unless we're talking to them face to face. And it's going to become like, I don't know, prehistoric times, right? Don't trust the technology.
That's also mine too.
Yeah. I think the red flag is, to answer specifically the red flag, I think that, because Scott, you're right. And I kind of touched on it and then I tangented myself and forgot to say it. So I suck. Tangents or something. But the red flag is if we are making huge steps forward in AI generation, whether it's content, video, deepfakes, whatever, and we are not keeping pace with the detection capabilities, the assessment capabilities,
right,
the ability to say, the ability to look at something like it blows my mind, right? Like let's okay, I'm sorry, but let's point out flat earthers, right? And I know
he loves
flat
earthers.
70% of the world is water, and that water is not carbonated, so the world is flat. But the ability to look at a video from a flat earther and have it be obvious that we're looking for the curve is idiotic, right? And when they use AI to deep fake, what is the Bill Nye the Science Guy? I'm expecting a Bill Nye the Science Guy deep fake where he stands up and says, we never landed on the moon, the earth is flat, and vaccines cause your 5G service to be boosted. Right? That's the deep
Sign
fake.
me up if that's the case.
I complained. I got a vaccine and I got a booster shot, and my cell service still stinks. But when we hit the point where Bill Nye is standing up on a video and saying that, and we can't trust that because we know that's not what Bill Nye the Science Guy, as much as I dislike the man personally, he's not going to say that, right? If we don't have the detection where automatically your system says, whoop, deepfake, right? If we have it, that's the red flag. We've gone too far if we focus just on the generation and not on the detection and assessment.
But see, that gets back into believing everything you see on social media and the whole disinformation and misinformation and not thinking for yourself or actually doing your own research. And I think that is the big red flag, right?
Well, people, no. I agree with you 100%.
No, I know what you're going to say.
But most people who say do your own research, they mean listen to Gwyneth Paltrow about Goop.
Well, okay,
right? Like, the idea that everything on the internet's true. You're absolutely right. We have to fix the detection.
Yeah, it's going to cause
too much disinformation that going out there, and whether you believe it's China or Biden or whatever, I don't care. The reality is way too much stuff we have. I actually do care, but we have way too much disinformation, and AI is going to make that worse. We've already seen, and I always love every time I see somebody say, well, it's the algorithm. I know they don't know what algorithms actually are. That phrase means I don't know what I'm talking about. But the reality is, as we move to AI systems and machine learning systems, we are going to see what is presented to us is personalized to get the biggest impact from us. Whether that impact is us buying something, whether it's voting for some jackass orange guy, or whether it's
emotions
to trigger our emotions.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important to detect.
If you haven't watched The Social Dilemma, you should.
Yes.
For that.
Yeah, it's great.
And I want to be very clear, because I've said that to a lot of people, and I've had a number of people say to me, "Oh, it's just them trying to convince us we can't." I'm like, no. Don't focus on the partisanship. Don't focus on the politics. Focus on the fact that the system is built to sell you something.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. And we always used to joke, and I realized that we're wrong. We always used to joke that if service is free, we're the product. We're not the product. We're the audience. The product is our data. And when you look at stuff, the Social Dilemma movie was really, really good. If you paid attention to that.
Yeah.
I saw way too many people like, well, Zuckerberg is left or right or middle.
Right.
And just understanding that no single person seems to really understand how the algorithm works.
Even they don't know.
Even
Facebook,
they know generally what it's trying to
Mm-hmm.
do, as Kevin said. To earn them more money, but they really don't know exactly how it works.
Right, which is why the machines will take over and humanity's days are numbered. Thank you.
And that's why.
If that's the conclusion you draw, Andy,
there's the conclusion.
Here's why it's so important to say please and thank you when you ask Alexa to do something. When you talk to Siri, did you say please and thank you? Because
it'll help your social credit.
You're on the list.
You're on the list. You'll be fine. Guys, thank you so much for a really interesting and entertaining conversation. Tom, tell everybody where they can find out more about you and your show.
Absolutely. Well, you can find us at sharedsecurity.net. So we have obviously all of our previous episodes are available there. You can subscribe to us from there, wherever you like to listen to podcasts. I think we're pretty much everywhere, all the main podcast apps. And yeah, we come out with new episodes every Monday. So please check us out.
Very cool. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate all three of you.
Thanks for having us.
We appreciate you having us on the show.
Yeah.